Of course, before we get to the referendum, we have to have the renegotiation.
Yeah.
And you've been thinking about that today.
Well, the Prime Minister's favoured EU think tank has been thinking about it on all of our behalves. They've come up with 11 proposals, and they range from soft and easily doable to pretty complex, and we looked at them today. 40 years ago, the Prime Minister spent many months shaking the European tree, trying to get power back from the continent, promising to correct the unfavourable terms on which the UK had entered the European community. Then Harold Wilson mopped his brow after what he called a long and tough renegotiation battle.
So the political argument in Britain is over.
But many thought his reforms were cosmetic. And so today, the Conservative Party watches their leader like a hawk, mindful he could do a Wilson. David Cameron, this weekend seen here at the G7, but his mind on Europe. He's been reluctant to issue a shopping list of demands. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras recently being forced to go back on his shopping list is a cautionary tale. Ultimately, David Cameron's going to have to come back here to Parliament and sell his reform to the people in there, in the Commons, Eurosceptic backbenchers and indeed cabinet ministers too. The reforms that we think are on the table, there's 4 or 5 of them, well at the moment, for Eurosceptics, they just aren't cutting it. So, what else could he pull out of the bag? Well, today, his favourite European think tank has come up with a series of 11 proposals, and critically, the person David Cameron has now appointed to be his EU advisor, well, until very, very recently, he worked for them. Open Europe want the Prime Minister to go big and bold in June. Afterwards, it'll be too late, they say. Their first group of reforms make the EU more flexible. These include protecting non-Euro states, and Open Europe believes something called a protocol could formalise the idea of a two-speed Europe, though not before 2017. The next group is competition, including reduced protectionism. Open Europe also think consensus here possible. The last column is democratic accountability. This is both the hard one, banning migrants from in-work benefits for 4 years, opposed by Poland, but also includes the best one, the one that could be most sellable on the doorstep, a red card or group of parliaments vetoing legislation. And then there's the idea of a double majority, where items must be approved with a majority both in the Eurozone and the non-Eurozone. You've got to pull 2 rabbits out of your hat, Prime Minister, to persuade these backbenchers to get on side. What would you recommend he should pull?
Well, I think the first is securing a big change in direction of the EU. That means ending ever closer union and making sure this is a multi-currency union where not everyone is going to join the euro and the UK isn't being dragged along to places it doesn't want to go. The second would be some kind of repatriation on certain key bits of legislation which are outside the single market and which should be more voluntary and more intergovernmental.
And of those 2, which would you choose?
I think more important is a change of direction in the EU. Even if you get a few bits back, a few pieces of legislation back, ultimately the UK could still be dragged into further integration. So I'd go to try and change the direction of the EU.